Hello, welcome to this SEM webinar. My name is Victoria Olsina and I'm an SEO consultant and head of SEO at The Journal. And I think this is the most exciting thing I have done during the lockdown. That's how exciting my lockdown was. I'm here in the room where I spend 16 hours a day, and it unfortunately is purple and wood. So I'm surrounded by purple and wood. Today, we are going to be talking about SERP features across 11 countries, and I have two great guests. One is my friend, amazing human being, SEO consultant and growth marketer, Juliana Turnbull. And last time we did a webinar together, everything broke down immediately. The presentation stopped, I had to restart my computer. The mic didn't work. So do you think that the same will happen today, Joe? Or
No, it will not happen.
Cool. Great. I'm positive about this too. We also have Jason Barnard, who is known as the brand SERP guy, and he has been doing research on SERP for years, so he will show us some of that today. He's also a musician, trainer, consultant, man of many talents. And myself. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. No. Yeah, great stuff. Yeah, I've actually got a collection of brand SERPs. I collect them in a big database, and Joe knows all about this because I use the Authoritas API for that. And I've been sorting through it all day, and I've got loads of really wild things that I didn't even imagine. So I'm really, really keen to listen to Joe, and keen as well to share what I learned today.
That's great. So it's this mystery research we're getting, like the COVID vaccine and the brand SERP, and your brand search research, all of in the same week.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't me. I didn't do the vaccine.
I'm disappointed about that, but well. Why don't we start? And well, Joe put together great slides that I have already seen, and with a lot of research about the SERP across 11 countries. Generally, we only talk about the UK and the US. I am based in the UK. I didn't even say where you were based, guys. I don't know if it's important or not. I am ruining this. I don't know. It's the first time I'm a host. So I'm going to say that I'm based in the UK, in London, but I was born in Argentina. Joe, would you like to say, where are you from? Well, this is a very complicated question because you lived everywhere. You were born in all of the countries. Okay, like say where you are and whatever you want to say.
So currently I'm in Barcelona. Yes, I did move around a lot of times. I think I've lived in 9 countries now. I am a British and Australian citizen. And my parents are soon to be French.
That's good. A woman with a lot of passports. Jason Barnard, tell us about you. Where are you based? Where you were born?
South of France. Born in the north of England. Live in the south of France. I became French on Brexit Day, the 30th of January. They gave me my French birth certificate, so I now have 2 birthdays. One on the 5th of June, don't forget that one, and another one on the 16th of September, which is my French one. Don't forget that one, everybody. I want presents and a party, please.
We all want a party. At this moment, a party with people. Yep. Anyway, let's get to the brand SERPs. So over to you, Joe. Take control.
Okay, I will try and take the control. Can you see? We'll do the test. Can you see my screen?
I can.
You can see the presentation.
It looks beautiful. I love the design.
Well, oh, good. Well, that was thanks to Nicola Carey, who used to be at Majestic, and she has her new company called Chunkable Moments. So thanks very much, Victoria, for the introduction. So I will take you through this a study and also a how-to as well. And hello, everyone that has joined us today. Hello, David. I see Charlotte, Sadishi, Ragul, quite a few people. Anton, hello. Hope you had a good holiday, Ragul. So thanks everyone for joining and being on the show. And thank you to Semrush, Anton, also for inviting me, and thanks, Jason. So I'm just going to talk a little bit myself. So here I am in Barcelona. Yes, I love Barcelona. So I found a sign, so I thought I'd have to have a photo by it. So I'm called Juliana here in Barcelona, also go by SEO Joe or Joe. And I've been working in SEO for a number of years, actually, since about 2008, 2009, I moved agency side. And I also have a Search London meetup that I've been organizing for the past few years with a Tim Sheed. It's now 9 years old. So we had our first virtual event in June, and we're going to do another one in October. I'm also a travel blogger, a chartered marketer, and I became a global freelance finalist this year, which was great. And also, I set up an event called Turn Digi, which was and is an online conference event that supports entrepreneurs, rising talent, and has a diversified range of speakers from all different countries, because I'm all about let's have people coming from different countries. So international SERPs, I'm going to go through three main things in here. First of all, defining what these snippets are, because I know there's lots of back and forth, lots of people can be confused about it. I'm also going to talk about the study. So as Victoria said, I've put together a study. I currently am a growth marketer at Authoritas, and I looked at a study of many different countries and looking at the SERPs over a 17-month period. And then I'm going to show you as well implementation. So how do you actually do this? So featured snippets. I think that a lot of people know what this is, but it was called Position 0. But now, because of the change that Google announced earlier, it's a few months ago now, it's now really just Position 1. Some people also call it direct answers, but it's basically when Google takes the content from a website, they present it as an answer, and I'm going to show you some examples of featured snippets. Because really, featured snippets appears depending on as well your content, if you have any schema at the back that you've put in, and also what terms you've put in. And it's also dependent on the location. So where are you doing this from? I will get different featured snippets if I'm doing it in Barcelona compared to in Germany. I do look at these Google Good guidelines. It is very useful to read them. There are, of course, some that you cannot seem to optimize for, like one called People Also Ask. This one is featured snippets here, as you can see, best ways to keep fit at home. I'm sure we've all been there. It says in the bottom right about featured snippets. And this one is People Also Ask. So many people have wanted to rank for the feature snippets, and also People Also Ask. It's more difficult to rank for People Also Ask. I've not been able to do it yet. Perhaps, I don't know, Jason, you might be able to expand on that in your part of the talk. But really, I try and focus on the content itself and worry less about People Also Ask. So this is the International SERP study that I want to take you through. So as I mentioned, I'm growth marketer at Authoritas. I'm also a freelance SEO consultant, and I'm really interested around international search because I've moved around many times, and I don't always like it when someone talks about one country because we're in many different countries. What happens in one country, if you're working, for example, on a global client, it's not always the same on the other one. So it's 11 markets, so 2 in Switzerland, France, and the German market, or the French and the German market. And then we also have 3 of the Nordics, Sweden, Norway, and Finland. We have 2 of the English-speaking countries, markets, UK and US. Sorry, that's 2 out of 4. We don't have Canada or Australia yet. And I've looked around 770 million keywords per month. So I'm looking, just due to time, I'm just looking at 4 main different snippets. One is the feature snippets, one is image, video, and then also looking at local as well. So I will go into detail of each of ones, but I just wanted to highlight the fact that, each country may have more of a dominance than the other. So for example, feature snippet, US and the UK had the highest percentage of the keywords that generated a featured snippet. France has seen an increase over the past few months, and the same with Spain, but it's not as high as, for example, the UK and the US. The local pack, I found that Sweden and Norway actually have the largest percentage of keywords, which I was quite surprised about. So looking at the featured snippets, I was looking at, as I mentioned, it was UK and US. And then quite surprising, actually, we found here, it was Sweden. So you've got UK and US there. And this is an average taken across those 17 months. And this is the percentage of keywords that then generate a featured snippet. Italy is not really one that seems to have much featured snippets, but it's a lot higher than Norway. Norway and Finland are very low, which is quite surprising, considering considering that Sweden has quite a high percentage. Normally, the Swedish and Norway markets tend to be quite similar. So, as I mentioned in my intro, featured snippets vary by country. So, here is one of Izzy Smith. So I was a part of this Women in Tech SEO mentoring session, and she's kindly mentoring me on some part of the program. And I wanted to ask her actually about, what is the featured snippets looking like on for your name. So she's written in German, who is Izzy Smith? And you can see here actually, see, that's her featured snippet. And then if you look here, I've done this from Barcelona. I've used the same text. There is no feature snippet. So this really does vary depending on country. You can try this with other people that you know. Jason, we can try it in France as well and see, or Victoria too. And you can see that the change depends on the country. I also wanted to show you as well just that the overall SERPs will also, how your website appears, also varies by country. So, for example, Santander, and this applies to people that are obviously working on global brands, the way that is appearing, this is not featured snippets, it's just what's appearing in the SERP results, how the website's appearing with obviously the site links there. This is different to what it appears in Spain. So Insurance Santander, obviously their website is a little bit different, and it's really not that friendly. It's actually quite rubbish compared to, if you see that, it's really clear. You can go into car insurance, home insurance, life protection. You can't really do that there. It's not very clear at all. So if you're working for Santander, sorry Santander, I like you, but I would sort your Spanish overview homepage out. And if anyone has any questions, please drop them in the chat. I can only see this screen, so I'm not looking at any other screens or comments. So the image search as well, I wanted to point out that this one actually, I saw a difference compared to the feature snippets. So in the feature snippets with the UK and the US that had the highest percentage of terms that were generating that feature snippet. If we look for the images, it's now actually Switzerland that is generating the highest percentage they are actually generating the image SERPs. And actually Norway, Finland, and Sweden are both increasing the amount of image results that they see out of the keywords that I had analyzed. So it's interesting to see that actually, as I said, with the US and the UK, you saw the highest percentage of terms or keywords generating or resulting in feature snippet, and here it's the opposite for image SERPs. And another thing I wanted to point out was that image SERPs, again, this also depends on where you are. So I've typed in the term or the city Barcelona here, and you can see information about Barcelona, things to do, top stories. My sister's in Australia, she typed in Barcelona, all you saw was the football team. So really different results depending on where you are. Looking at video SERPs, what I found was that Spain and the US actually had the highest number of keywords that resulted in video. Oh, sorry. And what I found is that France had a bit less, and the UK too. It's actually dropped a little bit, but Sweden actually was one of the lowest. So we saw before, I think it was Norway that had the lowest number of terms generating featured snippets, and here actually it's Sweden for the video SERPs. Now video SERPs, I wanted to show you just an example of, again, how it changes depending on where you are. So I was running Tea Time SEO at Authoritas, and Jason and Victoria came on, and so did Anton, and we had a lot of guests come on, which is great. But showing you this, you can see that this is actually a feature snippet, but the link is actually YouTube. So the feature snippet is actually pulling in through YouTube. Now I didn't add anything, any extra text to the YouTube channel or anything. This is actually just coming from the description. So this is English results. If I switch to Spanish results only, there is no feature snippet. It is just the videos coming through. So that I thought was quite interesting. Local SERPs as well. So local SERPs, as I mentioned at the beginning, it was actually Sweden and Norway that had the highest percentage of terms that were generated in the local pack. Finland had the lowest. And actually, I was also surprised that UK was actually not that high. USA was much higher. It had over nearly 15% of their terms of generating a local pack. And again, this is the average of July over the past 17 months. And again, local SERPs, you can say, write the same thing, but in different countries, it will generate different results. So in Spain, I put in the term co-working Barcelona, and the co-working place that I work at, Mobilin, that actually appears there. I asked Izzy if she could do the same in Germany, and you can see completely different results. 3 different results. You still get the local pack like and the map, but you see completely different map results there. So again, if you're working on multinational sites and you're saying that I am appearing for featured snippets or I'm appearing for in the local SERPs, you need to just make sure that you say, okay, and I'm dialing in from this country, or I'm using this API from this country. Okay, so we looked at what is a featured snippet and defined those. We then went through the study, and now I'd like to take you through the implementation. And then it will turn over for any sort of, we'll go over to Jason and then have questions. Oh, we've got quite a few people adding comments, which is great. So, implementation. Really, I would say you don't always need dev work. I'm just going to show you how you can do this. I'm looking at WordPress. So if there are other CMSs you can use, of course, as well, but I'm only showing you with WordPress. So this is the one that I recommend, this structured data plugin. Now, there wasn't one that offered all the different plugins, all the different snippets that you can add. I just used this one, and it was is quite good. So I'll just show you that here. But I would also recommend that you do rewrite your text if it's not in a concise way, and I will show you that as well in the presentation. So here, I don't know if you can see, here it is. It's called the structured data plugin. So in here you have one for web page, you have one for frequently asked questions, event, and there's also a how-to one. Now for the frequently asked question, I've actually gone in and selected some different different posts to use so that it would help to appear in the SERPs. And now we're going to see, did that work? So how do you do keyword research? I put against that a brand name, so Authoritas. I was just checking using the brand name. Now we did appear there for featured snippets. That was good. Because I did change the content and I added the schema. I was ranking on brand. If I want to say, how do you do keyword research without the brand? So this one, Keyword.io, they have a massive list. They're just appearing below the ads, and they are appearing for feature snippets here, which is great for them. And then this one, this is the frequently asked questions feature snippet. So I think I mentioned earlier in the schema markup, you can actually choose the page you want for the frequently asked questions. But I did also have to change the content too to appear for that. So I was really happy with it. But then I was like, right, I've changed this for Google Analytics. So we had Helen Pollard come in and talk about Google Analytics and some key reports to use. But I didn't. I didn't add any schema. But I made very clear paragraphs. But I didn't appear for feature snippets. Victoria's came on Tea Time SEO, so I thought I'd find out if she's ranking for feature snippets. Favorite SEO tactics that still work? No, she's not. Even though I actually did change the content, and I did add the schema markup, so that wasn't working, unfortunately. So, not always the case. But this one I was really happy with. This one was, we had Lucy come in and talk to us about actually having another CMS, Umbraco, actually be the best CMS. It wasn't actually WordPress. And she gave us a really good insight into that. So what I did is I changed the content just to make it like really clear. I put some bullet points in there as well. I didn't add any schema, and I am ranking for feature snippets. So the conclusion is really, you need to really monitor results, I would say. Really see what content you can or cannot focus on. Do change the content so that you can have it as lists or paragraphs or tables, because if you don't, you won't have the opportunity to appear for featured snippets. You should also optimize other channels. So as I showed you for YouTube, that was a feature snippet coming in, being pulled in for YouTube. I had not expected that. So just take advantage of all the channels that you do have. And I would also recommend a schema plugin, even though one schema plugin doesn't do justice for everyone. You just need to pick and choose which one. The free ones don't give you access to everything. The paid ones might, but I haven't tested every one. But really, I would just say is just test, monitor, record, and try again. Because it doesn't work always the first time, but you mustn't give up. It's something that you can then tell your boss, so manage those expectations. And just remember as well that the results are not always the same in all countries. They do vary, as I showed in these examples here. So thank you very much. You can contact me at SEO Joe Blogs. And yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.
That's great, Joe. Thank you. I remember when we were at Benchmark conference in Manchester, and there was one speaker from Microsoft that said that in 1998, Spice Wars was aired. And I knew it wasn't that day, but I checked. I had to check on Google because I said, well, at least I'm going to check. I don't know everything about Spice Girls. And when I Googled Spice World, the first thing that showed up was an Indian restaurant in the corner of the venue called Spice World. Yeah, so that's my SERP story. That was really good. Thank you for your research and for bringing, I think it's always very interesting that when speakers bring results that are not from English-speaking countries, because there are other countries.
There are other countries, yes.
There are other countries. Yeah, so that's great to bring visibility over that. And well, now over to you, Jason. Tell me what you want, what you really, really want.
I want the Spice Girls, apparently, because you're pushing it rather the really, really want thing. I'd like to give my little presentation. Lovely stuff, Joe. I thought it was really, really interesting. And I do develop on quite a lot of that because Joe shared her slides with me. So I tried to actually make this a little bit of a development on what she was talking about. I've been looking at international brand SERPs. I'm obsessed by brand SERPs. I'm called the brand SERP guy, or I call myself the brand SERP guy, so nobody else has got a choice anymore. And I thought I'd present myself through my own brand SERP. I've got 2 decades in digital, and I had a short career making cartoons. I was a blue dog in a cartoon series on TV. I also have a groovy podcast, 140 guest experts, and it's still going on. So do listen into that. I've been published in lots of different places, including Authoritas. Unfortunately, they don't rank on my brand SERP, so I couldn't use them as an example. And I go around the world giving talks and conferences, and there are several videos. And as you can see, sorry, from that one, my brand SERP actually represents who I am and what I do. And I think that's the most phenomenally important thing about brand SERPs is if you look at what comes up when somebody searches your brand name, does it represent who you are and what you do accurately, positively, and convincingly? Now, the plan for today, I'll let you read that. Bullet point lists are really, really problematic. And if I just let you read it while I'm talking away, I actually don't need to say all this stuff because you're all capable of reading, I hope. Although that's actually terrible of me because, in fact, somebody who's got sight handicap wouldn't be able to read it. So brand SERP intro, a helpful approach to rich elements in the SERP, analysis of rich elements in Anglophone brand SERPs, analysis of rich elements in FR, IT, ES, and DE, which actually corresponds to what Joe was talking about earlier on, the countries they chose, and then what you should be doing. Now, what do I mean by brand SERP and why is it so very important? Now, this is a brand SERP. It's what comes up when you search CaliQ. That's my company. And it's really important. It's your business card. It's what people see when they search your brand name, when they're either researching you before doing business with you, or if they're just Googling your name to navigate to your site. It's also a wonderful window into your digital ecosystem. It shows you what the world thinks about you, or at least what the Google thinks the world thinks about you. And what better measure of the world's opinion of you than Google? It's also a great reflection of your content strategies we'll see later on. If you don't have those video boxes, your video strategy isn't much good. If you don't have the image boxes, maybe your image strategy isn't up to scratch. Twitter boxes, same thing. So it's a wonderfully powerful overview of your brand in the eyes of Google, but also the way Google perceives the world to perceive you. And that's a bit complicated, but I think it's very meaningful. Now, what do I mean by rich element? Now, I use the word rich element to reunite universal search and extended search, because I don't think that's a very useful distinction. And I try and divide them into three groups that I find much more practical to work with. We have the near me elements, which in terms of geolocation and these international brand SERPs is incredibly important. And those tend to be curated business listings like Google My Business, Maps, Discover More Places, and so on and so forth. Then you have entity elements, which are Google's machine-curated encyclopedia, which show up all over the place. And we're seeing them more and more. I mean, if you look at the brand SERPs, or in fact, any kind of SERPs, you'll see more and more entities appear, and we'll look at that later on as well. Then you also have branded content strategy elements, which Joe talked about, working your YouTube channel. It's all that stuff, the branded content, whether it's hosted on your site or it's not. And it's all these things like images and videos and Twitters and news and podcast boxes, explore panels, featured snippets. People also ask jobs, FAQ. The list goes on and on. So you have these three distinct types of rich element. You have the local stuff, you have the entity stuff, and you have the branded content that you want to push up onto the SERP. And it's a great way to get a place on a SERP without those blue links. Now, brand SERPs, tracking, analyzing, and visualization with Authoritas, who are Joe's company, and WordLift, who are an Italian company, who do actually a schema markup plugin, which is absolutely wonderful. And CaliQ Pro, we track SERPs and we measure them, the brand SERPs. And we're tracking over 75,000 at the moment. On the right, you see the visualization that we give. And the idea here is to get rid of all the fluff and the clutter and the images and represent visually in as simple a manner as possible what it is that appears when somebody searches your brand, whatever country it may be in. For me, it's divided into two. You've got the left rail and the right rail. I did an interview with Nathan Chalmers from Bing, and he says right rail, left rail. For him, that's how it works. And I think that's a great way to distinguish between that stuff on the right, which is what Google and Bing, in fact, because they have a right rail too, consider to be facts, lots of entities there. And on the left rail, which tends to be more opinion, although they do have entities too. And at the top, you can see the CaliQ tool measures the quality of that brand SERP. How good is it? How good you look? And the control you have on it. Obviously, if you want to control your brand image, you need to control that brand SERP. So when somebody searches your brand name, they see what you want to see and they see content that you control. Here's an example, T-Mobile in America, and I've just set it up there to give you examples of what those kind of little icons represent, rich site links, map path. People also ask and use Twitter boxes, so on and so forth. So you actually kind of can situate that in your head in what you've already seen in SERPs every day, in fact. And now we're going to look at brand SERPs worldwide, Anglophone per industry. Starting with, I'm just going to do 3. It's really quick examples. Service providers, internet, telecom. I used T-Mobile as an example. And you can see how phenomenally different these brand SERPs are across these 3 different countries. I chose them because it kind of divides the world into 3 in terms of actual distance. And you can see that one on the left is incredibly long and very rich. Less so in the UK, and the Australian one is very short but incredibly rich. And what we see is that in this particular industry, when you break these brand SERPs down, in the US, it's 9% richer, 11% more entities are showing on this brand SERP, in this industry in the US than they are in the UK. And for Australia, Australia is way behind. Australian brand SERPs for the same data set, i.e. the same brands, is 30% less rich, or America is 30% richer and has 35% more entities. And this is the really boring screen that I find really interesting. And I can't go through it all in this very short presentation, but I do encourage you to either rewatch this and stop on the screen and look at it yourself and try and figure out what it all means, or download the slide deck. But you can see very clearly that in terms of entities, which are the ones that I've kind of highlighted in kind of that dirty orange yellowy color, you can see that America leads the world in terms of entities showing on the brand SERPs. And that's all that stuff on the right rail, plus the entity boxes, related entities on the left rail. Australia, in fact, doesn't even get a look in terms of entities listed on that left rail. So there's obviously, Google's got this kind of rollout system going with entities where it obviously starts in America. Britain doesn't seem to be too far behind, but Australia, other Anglophone countries are way behind. But if you look at the bottom, they've got loads of video boxes for service providers and internet, telecom, and I can't imagine why. If we look at vehicle shopping, I've chosen Ford, another international brand. You've got America, once again, richer, more entities going on there. You can see the little yellow symbols are entities. UK, yeah, fine, great, wonderful. Australia, a bit poorer. And it's the same thing once again. The USA is richer. It's got more entities in the vehicle shopping. But in fact, interesting enough, Google seems to have really got a grip on vehicles. So the entities, in fact, in Australia are showing almost as much as they are in the US. And this is the breakdown in terms of the actual rich elements that appear. You can see people also ask, that's getting more and more popular around the world. And we'll see later on in non-Anglophone countries, that isn't the case at all. Once again, those entity boxes, Australia doesn't get a look in. It's got loads of videos once again. There must be something in Australia with videos. Trying to move through this very quickly. Do feel free to watch this. Again, freeze the screens to actually look at the individual data. If we look into banking, same thing again. I mean, it's astonishing how we can see that America is terribly rich, terribly long, lots of entities, UK less so, and Australia much, much less so. And they're all Anglophone countries representing exactly the same set of brand names, brand SERPs. In this case, in fact, in banking, between the USA and America, it would seem that Google's got pretty much the same richness and the same number of entities. Once again, Australia way behind. And if you go on to this one, actually what's really interesting here, and it's the only example I could find, where if you look at the knowledge panel, the related entities boxes on the right-hand side, rich site links, people also ask, it's exactly the same numbers for the UK and America. Why? I don't know. But it's incredibly interesting. And once again, entity boxes, Australia, absolutely nowhere to be seen. Entity boxes don't seem to have propagated all the way around the world to Australia. I think they must have gone the wrong way round through the UK instead of going the other way around through the Pacific. It would have been much quicker. Now, different languages. I think Victoria was talking about that earlier on. Very rarely do we look at different languages. And I started tracking France because I live here. I started tracking Spain because Joe's there and because Aleda Solis asked me to track a couple of things. And Italy, it was for word lift. And Germany, it was just because I was curious. And here we can see in terms of languages how very far behind all these language versions are in terms of entities. You look at that bottom line, 200% more entity elements in US brand SERPs than in French brand SERPs in France for French brands. Same thing for Italy, same thing for Germany, same thing for Spain. And they're actually much richer in the US as well, but less so. So we've got this incredibly complicated set of data. Once again, freeze the screen and have a look at this later on. But you can see that people also ask, USA is so very far ahead. And my argument here is if you look at the entity boxes as well, USA way ahead, all these other countries absolutely not getting a look in, it's zero. No entity boxes on the left-hand side. Big disadvantage in entity boxes on the right-hand side, in the right rail. People also ask, seems to me to be entity-based. People also ask, almost never appears if you don't have some other entity-based elements in the right-hand rail. That's something I need to prove or disprove, depending on whether I'm right or if I'm wrong. And I'm going to start doing that with my lovely collection of multiple millions of brand SERPs. But whatever your industry, the conclusion of this is, I would say use Kalicube because it's my company, of course, but you go and find out what rich elements are prevalent in your industry, because then it gives you a good idea of what you should focus on. Some it might be video, some it might be local, some it might be images, another one might be podcasts, although that's probably not true. You can see, or Twitter boxes, you can see which ones are liable to be triggered most easily because it's relevant to your industry, relevant to the audience that are searching for your products. Now, this is obviously limited to brand SERPs, but then if you think about it, if Google's showing videos on your brand SERP, it means that videos are useful and valuable to its users searching your brand name. And if they've understood your brand, who you are and what you do correctly, that means it's probably very useful to that audience in a more general manner around the products that you're likely to sell. I also suggest that you get a knowledge panel on your brand SERP. At the bottom there's an article that I wrote for Search Engine Journal about how to get a knowledge panel without Wikipedia, and that's a whole big bag of worms that we've opened up there that I think we're going to talk a lot about over the coming months. Because entities are the future of SEO. If Google doesn't understand you as an entity, you've got no hope in the future, because Google's knowledge graph already drives all of these rich elements on the brand SERP and on any SERP. And it indirectly drives every single type of rich result and even the blue links. So if you aren't recognized as an entity, Google doesn't understand who you are and what you do, you're dead in the water for the future. So here's my conclusion. Brand SERPs are incredibly important, and very interesting and incredibly sexy. A helpful approach to rich elements in the SERP. That's the three definitions, if you like: the local stuff near me, the entity stuff, and the content on and off site content stuff. Anglophone brand SERPs vary enormously, so if you're an international brand, you really need to pay attention to that. These other four countries, that I look at, they're lagging slightly in rich elements. So in those countries, for your local market, in the local language, you can get the rich elements, you can get the video boxes, but it's lagging vastly in terms of entities, and that's something I think as an industry we need to work towards solving as a problem. You need to get in the knowledge graph and have a content strategy for those rich elements, which, if you do it for your brand SERP, will also spread over to other related SERPs. For more info, please do connect to Kalicube there. You can connect with me on Twitter or on LinkedIn. I love talking about all this stuff. Talking to Mordy Oberstein earlier on, going down rabbit holes about brand SERPs and knowledge panels and the knowledge graph, and I'm absolutely obsessed. So if you've got anything interesting to share with me, please do so. That was my little talk. Brand SERPs International Study. Thank you for listening. Now back to Victoria.
Thank you, Jason. I was wondering, that's great. Actually, I'm familiar with your platform, and I think it's fantastic. So thank you for sharing that with us. I know I'm the host. So I was wondering, I know you don't want me to say any more Spice Girls related content, so I'm going to change my original question, because I already know who is your favorite Spice Girl and SEO Joe Blog's favorite Spice Girl. So I would like to know, what's your favorite SERP feature?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. That wasn't a question I was expecting. You actually told me the question you were going to ask, and I prepared an answer, and now you've completely caught me on the hop.
Because you told me you don't like Spice Girls.
No,
Improvisation, Jason.
Improvisation is off script.
But my number one top favorite SERP feature is The knowledge panel. I love knowledge panels. They're so much fun. And I've been experimenting the last few months with trying to trigger them, trying to create knowledge panels for different entities around myself and around my company. And I've got the TV series I did. It had a blue dog. It had 4 blue dogs and 5 yellow koalas in it. And they're these 2 families that kind of hang out together all the time. And I've managed to get Google to say, Mummy Koala, her significant other is Daddy Koala. And she knows Mawa Dawa. It doesn't mean anything if you haven't seen the TV series, of course.
Yeah, we share the TV series.
We will see them. I think that everybody in our audience should see it. Yes.
So it's the idea is say, can I create reality in Google's mind? And I did with my podcast. I ended up doing live streams because I can't go to conferences. I used to do the podcast face to face, and I started doing live streams, and I found it really disappointing, I suppose. I don't really like the online thing. I prefer face-to-face when you actually look people in the eye. But what it's enabled us to do is Monday night, I got a new entity in the knowledge graph in 10 minutes flat. Literally, I created an event on my site, and it was in the knowledge graph, showing in the SERP within 10 minutes. So the knowledge graph is actually very, I was going to say manipulable, but that's kind of terribly naughty. Informable, educatable. Let's use the word educatable. The knowledge graph and the knowledge panels are educatable. So I love them.
Great. Yeah, I read the article about how to get into the knowledge base without Wikipedia, and I saw the events that you do, the event, the schema for events that you do for your podcast, and I thought that was a very clever way to do it.
That's with WordLift, the Italian company. I mean, it's really, really, really exciting and fun stuff to do. And what I love about them is not only they've got this great plugin for WordPress, but also they let me do silly experiments, and they join in. And anyone who lets me do silly experiments and joins in is my best friend.
It's like Semrush that allows me to host this webinar as a silly experiment for the brand. That is fine. They need more women, and here we are. Joe, what's your favorite? What a time to be a woman. Well, what's your favorite SERP feature? I'd
really like that featured snippet one because I was playing around with it and I can see results off the back of it. I was actually inspired by you, Victoria. You spoke at Search London in November, back in the day when we had in-person events. Yeah, I thought, okay, let me just try this. We're not doing any dev work and see if we can make a difference. So I like that, and I would have shown more results, but actually working on changing some aspects of the website. We haven't gone live yet. So maybe when we go live with a new updated website, I might see some changes as well, and then I can share. But really, featured snippets.
I'm happy I'm so influential in this industry that I have inspired you to do so. So we have some questions from the audience. We have 3 questions, I think. So I think that's better than me doing a silly experiment. So I'll go to these questions. Now, Jason, I think this question is for Jason. How do you define an entity, and why are there this is 3 questions in one, so I was tricked. So there are 3 questions in one. How do you define an entity? Why are so many entities in the US, and how can you get in the right hand rail?
Oh, right, okay. Entity, it's a thing. So it's a person, a place, a book, a film, a character in a TV series, a blue dog in this example that I've been giving. But it's also concepts. Economics, for example, is a concept, but it's still an entity. It's anything you can identify and explain. So it's actually pretty broad. And if you look at the list of schema markup, what you can put into schema markup, it's pretty long. And you can use that as a very good guide of what an entity is. And if you don't, a good piece of advice about schema markup, if you can't find the exact thing, if it's not a corporation, an event, a person, a movie, whatever it might be, just say thing. A thing, basically an entity is a thing. And if you can't find a better idea, just say, oh, it's a thing. And Google can probably figure it out for itself. And the best way to identify to Google which entity you're talking about is to point to Wikidata. Wikidata is a great way to do that. DBpedia is another great way. Wikipedia is a third one. Wikipedia is much more limited. Wikidata is wider. DBpedia, is pretty good. But the best way to say to Google, I'm actually talking about this particular entity, i.e. Jason Barnard. I'm an entity. This particular Jason Barnard, not one of the other 250 Jason Barnards. You can point to my, you used to be able to point to my Wikipedia page until they deleted it. Because I've been messing with it too much and doing too many experiments. They actually deleted everything I've ever been involved in. So it's been a bit of a sad period for me because my blue dog got deleted from Wikipedia and so did my punk folk band. So that's what a thing is, and I'll stop moaning about Wikipedia. How do you get in the right-hand rail? That's the easy way. If you can create a Wikipedia page, then you can get in the right-hand rail pretty quickly because Google is using Wikipedia as its training wheels to understand the world. And the knowledge graph, it feeds pretty much directly into the knowledge graph. But you don't need Wikipedia, and that's what I'm trying to push to people. And it's a pity that the Wikipedians don't really like me because I'm actually one of the people who defend it and say, stop doing their heads in, start using other sources. You can do it. And my podcast is a great example. Is I got the podcast episode into the knowledge graph and onto the right rail without using Wikipedia, Wikidata, or even DBpedia. So there are lots of sources out there. Google, what it wants is to understand and be convinced that it's correctly understood. And it's up to you to explain and educate and convince. That's how you get in the knowledge graph. That's how you get, the right rail. Excuse me, Joe, sorry.
No, I was just saying, so maybe, Jason, you might be able to teach us.
Well, it's funny you should say that. I'm actually writing a course about it. I've got a whole brand SERP course that I'm selling very badly because I'm not very good at business.
For 200 euros, you can.
You've been looking me up.
Yeah, I know. I'm actually Google, Jason.
Oh, right,
so,
okay.
I will evaluate if I put your blue dog up or not.
Yeah, and well, in fact, that's the thing is for that course, as you're saying, what I'm doing is researching with these characters, with my band, with myself. I put things in Wikipedia. I messed with Wikipedia. They deleted everything. They're starting to mess with my Wikidata stuff, so that's going to make my life even more difficult. But the more they make it difficult for me, I'm hoping the better I will get at this, and then that course will be full of incredibly helpful information of how to get into the knowledge graph really quickly and really easily, and without very much effort, because I would have made all the mistakes. That's the idea. I make all the mistakes.
So how do you? Sorry.
I just said that. Jason,
I'm going to interrupt. Sorry. You go, Joe.
I just said Jason's made all the mistakes so that we don't have to. So I was, the reason I asked that question was, so how can we hear? Okay, yes, because I know you were doing that course. So that would have been a perfect example to say, oh, yes, I'm doing the course. Here's the information. Okay, good. We'll look it up.
You just fed it to me so well, and I'm so dopey and stupid. I thought it was kind of a piece of luck for me. Anyway, thank you very much. But the whole Wikipedia episode, I mean, just to come back to that, I think we need to bear in mind that a lot of the Wikipedia stuff is not just getting links, which is traditionally why people have used Wikipedia, or getting the knowledge graph. A lot of it is to do with ego. I mean, I hate to say it, but when they deleted my page, my ego took a really big hit. Then deleted the folk punk band, my ego took a hit. Then they deleted the characters, my ego took a hit. And it's a lot to do with ego because now I'm actually building them back up again. And it isn't a problem, it isn't problematic, and it isn't difficult. But I'm just weeping and moaning and crying because
Your worth shouldn't depend on Google, on me, Jason.
I agree. Yes, thank you very much.
Anyway,
if you are Google, I'll let it depend on you because you're a really nice person.
You don't know that yet. Now I can delete you at any moment, so don't make me upset.
Well,
why would you be a monopoly if you wouldn't be evil?
You're a monopoly then.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm on a monopoly running the world. I learned this from the country I live in. It used to be an empire. It used to be an empire well, I'm not going to go into that. Let's go to another SEO question. There is Hans Knapp that says, but isn't more than just geography. I have seen for the same geo different snippets for different users.
I'll just take that. That might have been for local search, but so really I was just doing an experiment. I was doing it in a private browser, and I was using the same term in one country and asked someone to do it in another private browser in Germany. So there were different results. If you were using it in your own non-private browser, yes, you'd have different results. So but that's the same also with rankings. When there's, you're dealing with your client, oh, but I'm ranking number 2. Yeah, but they're not using a clean browser, so their rankings will be different. But you can, use tools to actually collect, different SERP results, including the local pack. And as Jason said, Authoritas is one of the platforms that you can use to get that information.
That's great. Everybody promoting their own business. I'm in the semi-final of a comedy competition. If anybody wants to join in, Thursday, 3rd of September is pay what you want, what you really, really want, and yeah, you can support SEO. One comedian in SEO, which I actually would like my knowledge graph, Jason, to say both things of me. I don't have any knowledge graph at the moment, but when I have it, I would like to have SEO and comedy, which would be like my blue dog.
Yeah. Well, there is actually a problem with that, which is quite interesting, is that Google doesn't have that multifaceted view of the world.
Well,
and from my point of view, I was a musician first, then I was a digital marketer, then I was an author, and now I'm back to British-French musician. And Google can't get its head around the idea that it could present me in multiple manners in the same breath. But if you search for my professions, it can actually distinguish the fact that I've had multiple professions. Yeah. So that idea of multifacetedness, Google isn't there yet. I mean, hopefully it will get there. But I mean, if you imagine the problem and the difficulty it's going to be having right now, just understanding the world, even in a unifaceted manner, asking it to jump to multifaceted so that you can be a comedian and an SEO expert.
It's exactly like my boss.
Really?
No. Glenn is great.
All right.
Glenn understands everything I do. I want to send a big regards to Glenn, who is listening.
Hello, Glenn.
Glenn is great.
But that also comes back. Sorry, I was talking to Jono Alderson from Yoast about it, and he's kind of frustrated by the fact that Google tends to like pages that only talk about one entity. Once again, if you start talking about lots of different entities on one individual page and mixing them up and doing, even if you do the schema markup, I tried it with my blue characters, my blue dogs and yellow koalas, and it's worked much better since I created one page for each character. So really have to think about Google as a child. It's a fairly slow learning child. It needs a very simplistic view of the world with one entity per page explained in a really simple manner and written up in schema markup, which is incredibly powerful. And Google takes schema markup incredibly seriously. And once again, my experiments have been indicating that it really does rely on schema markup. My entire knowledge panel just disappeared after the Wikipedia episode, not because of the Wikipedia episode, but because I messed up my schema markup. And Google completely freaked out and it just dropped the whole thing and created a new entity within 24 hours. So as David Amelin said on my podcast, it means that Google has this kind of, I don't know what you call it, a permanent memory. So even if you get in there and disappear, it's going to pull you back in again. Sorry, I'm going on. Excuse me.
Yeah.
But no, I just wanted to.
I didn't freak out, Jason. I want to tell you, speaking on behalf of Google, that I didn't freak out.
Yeah, I would like to. I was just gonna say I'd like to also get in like the knowledge panel or but yeah, I'm not just in a box like, oh, this is SEO Joe from London. No, she's in Spain, EU flag. Australian, British, does SEO, but also is a travel blogger and does a bit of improv. So what's Google going to do with me then?
No, Google's going to have a really hard time getting its head around who you are and what you do because you're so multifaceted. You too, Victoria. Being multifaceted is a problem for Google. And somewhere along the line, you actually have to say, this is how I want to be presented and make a choice yourself and push that. Because you were not going to get that multifacetedness in there. But you still have to explain the multifacetedness. It's just Google won't present it because it's never really going to get a grip on it.
I was using, I think you mentioned the same as, a schema, same as. Victoria Olsina SEO is the same as Victoria Olsina Comedy. I'm going to try to stick to the only profession that gives me money, which is SEO for the moment. But who knows after the competition, now that everybody on this webinar will show up and vote. Who knows?
Maybe you can share that link, maybe, Victoria, or ask if you can share.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is that stuff like music and films and probably comedy as well, it's so well documented online that Google, it finds it quite easy to get a grip on that. All the records I've made and the films I've made have got listed in IMDb and Music Brains and so on and so forth. So it's going, I'm sure with that, so I'll just put that. When I say to I'm actually a digital marketer, it's not documented very well. So it's very difficult for me to get Google to get a grip on it. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, probably. Well, but you do the schema for events. So you have talked at if you talk at a digital marketing event, and it's on the same theme with people that are you have the guests that are also digital marketers or SEO. We're talking about the same thing.
That's it. You spotted my terribly simplistic plan. Is to simply connect myself to all of this stuff so much that it outweighs all the other stuff about me. And I would imagine that I'm hoping it's going to work. Give me a couple of months and I'll come back and tell you it didn't.
Well, if it was a secret plan, you publish it. You publish it online. I read the article, and that's where I got this from.
Oh,
anyway,
right.
Do we have 2 minutes? I will take. I'm the host, so I'll do whatever I want.
Yep.
Last question. For e-commerce site, I think it's a very interesting question. Would you consider that the product you're selling is the entity?
Yes, definitely. The thing I talk about brand SERPs because I started talking about brands and personal brand SERPs, i.e. what turns up when somebody searches your brand name or your personal name. But in fact, on the CaliCube tool, you can go and you can put products, you can put events, you can put any kind of entity you want. And in fact, rather than brand SERPs, it's actually entity SERPs. What appears when you search for a named entity? So a product is a named entity. So yes, that's an entity that's hooked onto your brand, and part of the whole future of SEO is going to be how do I explain to Google who I am, what I do, what entities are related to me, including my products, my employees, the people who founded the company, the partners, the sponsors. And that's what we're doing with Semrush. Semrush have kindly sponsored my podcast, and I've been saying, oh, they're the sponsor, so hooking myself onto them. So it's explaining relationships with other known entities that it's going to get us all moving forward. That's
great. So, well, thank you very much. We have run out of time. Thank you very much for your research, Joe and Jason, for the showing us your research up to date too. Thank you for everybody that tuned in today. And thank you to Kate and Anton that invited us, and they're running everything on the private channel. So a lot of work. They have done a lot of work for today. And yeah, well, thank you for being wonderful.
Thank you, Victoria.
Muchas gracias. Thank you, Anton and Kate, and Jason and Victoria. And we look forward to seeing your comedy show, Victoria.
Well, I look forward doing Jason's course. And yeah, hopefully I can be a blue dog in a knowledge panel. For silly experiments, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much,
Great.
Victoria.
Thanks for your time.
Joe,
See you
Kate,
later.
Anton, Semrush. Bye-bye.